welcome back to the Let's Backflip show. This is episode 9 of the video vlogcast, 25 if you're listening to the podcast. And this is a special episode. This is coming out on 11/27, just a couple days after Thanksgiving, where hopefully you were with your family or your friends, eating a lot of food, probably too much food, and thinking about things that you're thankful for. And that's actually why we have Phil joining us today. So thanks, Phil.
Yes, I do often eat too much food.
Oh, I wasn't even going there, but that totally works.
Yeah.
So for those who can see the wide angle, you know, my size versus Phil's, Phil, and maybe per meal could out-eat me,
well,
which is a talent.
I would say
I'm a big guy.
That is a talent. I look at it as a talent. It's a great gift.
And something to be lauded.
Something to be very thankful for.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah. So thankfulness. It leads us right into our topic of today.
Exactly.
Great segue.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Which is fun. I don't have to write all this stuff. So this is a hashtag philosophical. So this is one that you're going to be talking to us about. And part of it is because you think about things. And that sounds stupid, but you process things. You're very intentional in thought. And so talking about these types of things like thankfulness with you is always fun, and we can always go, kind of deep into things.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's something I do enjoy. Philosophy, I've enjoyed it in college. and still enjoy it, So yeah, getting to talk about things like this is really fun for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. And we all have to for marketing purposes. So what are we talking about today? Kind of give me the overview of what you want to talk about.
Well, talking about thankfulness, gratitude, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
With Thanksgiving here upon us, it's
or 3 days ago.
Yeah. The season of Thanksgiving.
That's what I call it. You can't eat turkey anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of Thanksgiving, which is like the turkey sandwiches after the fact.
Right.
It's so good.
A little mustard. Do you do mustard, or what do you do?
I enjoy mustard. I also enjoy mayo, but yeah, if I can do mustard, I'll do mustard.
Yeah, we're a mustard house.
Like all the way through, like just no mayo at all.
On your cereal, on your pizza, in your drinks. Yeah.
Nicely done. That's awful.
So thankfulness, you were starting to explain what is gratitude. Let's get deep, man. Let's go deep.
Well, I think that I don't know if you've experienced this. You probably have. My understanding of gratitude has changed somewhat since
There's a smirk happening.
since having children, right? So like, what does it mean to teach gratitude, right? Like we have this sort of I don't know, this rote question that we ask of our children. I think any time that we recognize, like, oh, they've been given something, what do you say?
Yeah.
Right? What do you say? Thank you, right? Like that's sort of the thing. And so we sort of intuit this that we need to instill in our children this response when they're given something, right? So that they acknowledge that they've been given something that they didn't necessarily deserve, or that was, just a nice thing that somebody did for them, and to acknowledge that.
Right.
Right. And that comes, I think, from a sense, like our sense of justice. We have, just as human beings, I think we sort of intuit justice, and I think that that we all have a sensitivity for justice. We recognize that in that case, something is owed, right? So like if something is given...
In this case, gratitude is owed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's certainly not to the same degree as that gift, right? Like, and very often but something, some gesture, some acknowledgement, something is owed to the other person. And I think that idea is not specific to any particular, creed, any particular religion, any particular time or era, throughout history. I feel like that's sort of a universal... Kind
of that basic concept of gratitude or thankfulness, or that exchange that happens.
Yeah, that's one of those things about justice, right? Like that it's sort of just perpetuated throughout history.
Innate.
Yeah, I think that it is innate. It's something that we recognize from a very young age. I think that with practice, we get better at recognizing it, and that's, the job of a parent, right, is to help a child sort of.
Now, are you saying recognizing that innate sense of justice, or recognizing that innate
Both.
gratitude?
I think that my son is a great example of this. I've always said that he has a very acute sense of justice. Now, it is often very egocentric, right, for a child, that there's a they recognize that they want something, for example, and they might not be able to have it. And to them, for Mikey especially, like, he recognizes that as a great injustice, right? So like I've got this understanding that this sort of thing exists, this idea of like, well, sometimes things are owed to people. Now, clearly, that needs to be formed because we're off a little bit there, right? But
that innate understanding or that initial reaction, is started. In the right
we have
direction.
some sense of justice, right? And that's sort of just there. I think just peoples across history have pretty universally a good, some expression of justice in their law, in the way that they treat each other. They've pretty much universally held justice up as a virtue, right? So as a good.
Well, it seems too, maybe that more tangible idea of justice and law. I don't really have anything to back this up, but it seems like it comes with any type of group or society. On your own, you probably don't need the laws in the same way or justice in the same way that we need it when we have 2 people or 3 people or 1 million people, because like you were saying, that egocentric view, while loving yourself is not wrong, behaving in a way that hurts others or impedes on somebody else in a negative way, for a society that generally is not good. And so it seems like that, that innate sense comes out of that normal functioning, as a group, as a society.
It does seem to you can just kind of look throughout history, and as a general rule, there really, there's not a society that could say, yes, it is a good that this person should cheat another person. You know what I mean? That's never been held up as a virtue. We pretty much always recognize that, like, if somebody's owed something, then that person ought to give it. So I think that's sort of the root of gratitude, at least on sort of an initial level, right? And I think we kind of get that, and that's sort of easy to not easy to teach in that it's easy to do, because it's not, but it's sort of straightforward, right? Like it's, hey, this good thing happened to you, you should say thank you, kind of a thing, right? Sometimes I think we're not great at that. I think that I even as an adult, like, there's times where I recognize, like, I should have acknowledged this thing better. For example, thank you notes. I've been awful at thank you notes. Really, really bad at it.
And your grandma hates it.
Yeah, I remember
she's been expecting them every year with that $10 check.
Yeah, and I owe my grandma's many thank you notes. It's like a vice of mine, right? Like I should do better. And I think that's no one does it perfectly. I remember
with thank you notes too, like, so there's a interesting thing that's happening here too, is sometimes there's an expectation of gratitude and a feeling or an interpretation of an interaction if you don't give me gratitude. So that makes me think too about giving or sharing, or kind of that thing that happens. Like, if I give you something and then demand that you thank me, or think less of you because you don't thank me, is that let's see, I don't even know where I'm going with this question, but I feel like that happens, right?
Yeah. Well, there's certainly, I think you can sort of a violation of, a gift would be to have an ulterior motive, right? So that if you were doing it for the sake of the recognition, and for only that sake, or even,
not to say our grandmas are doing that,
no, but
that there is often in justice and in gratitude, maybe in these social situations, some expectation. And is that valid?
I think it is. I think it's okay. I think that we recognize that, like, if I do something that is good for somebody else, we appreciate when that's acknowledged. I think it's okay to appreciate that, and also to feel perplexed or hurt if that just doesn't come about. But at the same time, that ought not to be the reason that we do nice things for people, right? Like, so if it doesn't come, then should that stop you from giving gifts in the future? No, I don't think so, right? So it'd be better, more virtuous if you didn't do that, if you didn't let that negatively affect your view of that person. But I think it's fair to recognize that, if you do something, if you do give a gift, that if that person, doesn't offer anything, then that's not fair, or and that doesn't feel good. So I think that's okay. What I was going to say, I remember a few years ago, something that bugged me was, it was during when President Obama ran for re-election. And this was when it was Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan who were running on the Republican ticket. And there was a thing that politics, it's really hard to go too far down the road of politics before you start recognizing that the reason that things happen is simply because it's politics, and that's just sort of the game that they have to play. Right. But there so often sound bites, I think, become more important than actual content.
Yeah, it's almost like that post-Reagan era, or that that TV, that televised, that media-centric political opinion kind of made that happen.
Whatever caused it, there was a thing that was said. President Obama was going on about the recognition that people who have built businesses or started businesses or whatever owe, in some sense, a debt of gratitude to a lot of different places, right? So like, you had opportunity, your parents, your education, your upbringing, the fact that you live in America, different things.
The fact that you're a white male,
whatever it is,
I've heard it.
So like there are, and I think that he was not incorrect in that recognition, right? Like, absolutely, we ought to know that yes, even the great things that you have done and deserve credit for, you didn't do them by yourself. You didn't do it by yourself, right? Like, and that's good to acknowledge. And it's good for a person to acknowledge that, and that's something that I hope to instill in my children, that like, we need to have a general sense of gratitude, just for the great gifts that we've been given that frankly we've taken for granted, just the fact that we live here, the fact that,
So I should take a knee during the national anthem? Is that the conclusion of what
Hey-o.
you're saying right there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the
which real quick seems like, kind of like what you're saying, being grateful and having gratitude towards, the country that we have is what we have, but to be super successful and to be in an arena like the NFL, maybe we can hit there real quick. Do they owe, respect to, and gratefulness to that country, even though they see issues, other issues that are happening?
Yes. Yeah, and the argument I think that I've heard from the other side is, we're not doing this to be disrespectful. I think, and I'm not going to weigh in necessarily on what I think they ought to do, but I will say this, that just because you say, I don't mean to be disrespectful in doing this, doesn't make it respectful. You can't just define something, as a thing, and then all of a sudden it is that thing. I mean, if it is inherently disrespectful, then it just is that.
Or if it's like, I didn't intend to do that. I mean, like that's in a conversation. Like, you said something, that made me angry. Like, I didn't mean to. Well, okay, well, it did.
Yeah, but you did.
Yeah, and like in marriage, you'll figure out, okay, well, is this a me thing or an us thing, or what is it? And starting to look inwards first, you can better understand, okay, I'm just kind of ornery about this, and the way that my wife said this was fine. Or I don't know, I just don't like the way when you say it that way, like when Madalena says, I have dad shoes. I'm just kidding. Monica's like, you totally have dad shoes. Chuck those shoes out the door.
It's not the dad shoes, it was a combo with the dad.
With the socks.
Yeah.
They were, I had some athletic socks on. They were not no socks. They were athletic socks. So there's a little bit of a pipe.
And wearing shorts, it was obvious.
A day you weren't here though, I did wear my dad shoes. I was like, I want to be comfortable today. I'm gonna wear some dad shoes.
That's fair.
They look like orthopedic shoes.
Velcro. That'd be
so
awesome.
Good. Know thyself.
Okay. Yeah. So, no, I do think that every single person that lives in this country, on some level, owes has some, reason to be thankful, for the people and the decisions that have been made coming before us, right? Like there's no matter what, even, people who are oppressed now, there's been progress made, right? And so there's gratitude owed to those people who have, fought. And this goes back a very, very long way. I mean, every single person here, at some level, whatever opportunities they've had have come in part, at least, to the work and the sacrifice of other people. So, anyway, so this discussion that was happening during the election, right? So, President Obama says, you didn't build that, right? Like, and it's in and amongst a longer sort of discussion.
A big discourse, or
right.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, it was just...
So it's like a small part of a larger point.
A small part of a larger point that, frankly, like, was a good point. I mean, it really is a good point. Now, that's not to diminish the accomplishments of people, particularly business owners, or, that doesn't diminish it at all. It's simply a recognition of reality. Yeah. And it's a good, like I said, it's a good thing. It's something that I would want, like in my children, for example, to have a spirit of. Yeah, he got crushed for it. Yeah. And there was... I
mean, it's so obvious though, right? Like, the family that I have, where I grew up, the color of my skin, unfortunately still is an issue. And all those things, all those do lead into where I am. Because if I was a woman in Saudi Arabia, the opportunities that I have are extremely different.
Right.
My quality of life could still be very good. However, I didn't grow up in a way that I met people that I can work with that, are going to be high enough in companies and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because of the situation, that I was born into, that I worked hard to be a part of, and, all that. So to me, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah. Like, yeah, of course, be grateful, be thankful. And if you're not, like, are you kidding me? Like, maybe your immigrant grandparent who came with $2 in their pocket, not even that, with pennies in their pocket, and built their business, and that, that's a story of overcoming adversity by yourself,
Sure.
But even then, they still had opportunity in America.
Right.
They were fleeing persecution, whether religious, racial, whatever it is, come over here. And even though, in those times there was still segregation and different neighborhoods and all that they had to fight through, it was still a greater opportunity than what they were fleeing. You know? So, I mean, even there, the hardest working people, had that opportunity.
Yeah.
So.
No one does it by themselves. There just doesn't exist. Like that. We all need, we rely on other people, which is why we're given other people, right? To have this help, to have this community, right? And we can, build each other up. So anyway, so this, at full disclosure, I'm a conservative and have voted that way. But that particular thing just bothered the heck out of me, because I was like,
the people blasted Obama for that.
I really I was, and it was, I watched a lot of, the campaign trail, and it was just like, you did build, and I get that you have to play the game, and you have to,
point at stupid things or things that sound stupid out of context.
It was like, what, this is something that actually, it kind of bothers me, because I think in a private moment, if you really took the whole thing in, it even, it's not like a liberal conservative thing. This is just like a gratitude thing. This is a human thing. Like, we just need to recognize, it's good to recognize that we owe other people for the sacrifices that they've made, whether we know them or don't know them. And even if I have done a ton of work, I've still been given opportunity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. And that makes me think about the Electoral College as well, like that thing that makes the popular vote not matter in a sense, where, when our government was formed, people weren't able to travel in the way that we can now, right? So your candidate wouldn't be able to go everywhere, so you had representatives in places, and then a person to represent your vote based on, how people in the area were voting, and information wasn't available, right? So everyone wasn't informed. I wouldn't be informed, I may own, if I was a business owner, I may go to some events where people, have been to Washington or, are informed, but I would not be informed myself. I would not have heard that entire speech, let alone a little section of it that I could get really mad at and raise a pitchfork over. So, that's one of the reasons that was the way it is, and maybe one of the reasons why we kind of pay attention on that micro level at this point, which don't need to get into like how do we fix our political
right.
system.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But that idea of gratitude, and even that, and trust and justice. Like there was people that I trusted to, even hear something, maybe dislike something in something that somebody said, but not judge somebody based on that one little piece. Judge it on the whole, judge it on the rest of their actions, and
you just know that again, just to put a bow on the politics thing, like there's people whose job it is to like comb over all of the words that people have said and like find a thing that's gonna that I can pull out of there and it's gonna get a reaction. Like that's people are employed and paid money to do that. So like I get it, and it happens on both sides. Yeah. But it was just one that sort of, I was like, guys, this really kind of stinks. I don't agree with this point. Like I just
hopefully you didn't write that on Facebook though.
I didn't. Yeah. No. Well, I probably. I mean, that was a long time ago.
When you like to argue on Facebook.
Yes.
Good times.
So gratitude, in the sense of, hey, I'm thankful for the good things that I have and the good things that have happened to me and for the gifts that I've been given, right? And so this is sort of a universal understanding of Thanksgiving, gratitude, and it's rooted in our understanding of justice, I think. But this is sort of an interesting, graduation of the idea of gratitude that I was reading about earlier. And this is where I think faith comes in a little bit, and you and I are both Catholic Christians and theists, obviously. And the idea of gratitude in that sphere, right? And so if we go beyond just the interpersonal and we go beyond just sort of the human and
beyond
relational,
the natural to the supernatural,
right?
Right.
There's a great story from a few years ago when Stephen Colbert took over The Late Show. And you'll appreciate this because
a cool Catholic dude.
Yeah. And you'll appreciate this because I know you're a big fan of Tolkien. Is that how you pronounce it, by the way? Tolkien?
If Colbert says that, then yes.
Yeah.
I've always said token.
Token. Like token, like you put
like
in
at the arcade.
Right.
Yeah.
Token.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a silent L. I don't know. So anyway, he experienced great suffering when he was a kid. His dad and his two brothers died in a plane crash when he was 10. Yeah, when he was 10 years old. And he's one of like 11 kids, I think. Yep. So his mom, had raised, 8 kids or, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that math really adds up.
8, yeah, 9? Must be 9.
If you lost one?
Yeah, lost 2. But
2 kids?
But I think he was one of 11, and a dad and 2.
This is very important. Okay.
Yeah. So a dad, the dad, and Stephen's two.
It's very important to get this right.
Christ, this is bad.
I'm not trying to make light of the situation.
You're doing a great job.
I just have.
Remember what we talked about before, where you can't just say
it's a logical. This is. I talk about this with my wife. I'm like, nope, you said that wrong. Can't compute. Can't talk about the thing that you actually want to talk about.
Yep.
It's an issue. I'm working through it.
That's fair.
So
anyway,
she raised 9.
Yeah, she raised 9, I believe, on her own. So he was giving an interview to GQ magazine. This is like right when it kind of was announced that he was going to take over The Late Show. And he gave the interview, and they were sitting in his office for the interview, and the interviewer was sort of flummoxed when he said, "The thing that I wish had most not happened, I've come to love." Or I've come to love the thing that I wished had not happened. Something to that effect. And the interviewer was kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, how could you possibly love or have any sort of Thanksgiving for that? And he pointed to a letter that was written by Tolkien to a priest who had written to him and suggesting that Tolkien maybe didn't treat death with enough sensitivity in his writings. Okay.
Yeah.
So the priest was sort of suggesting or asking, like, do you feel like you're treating this with enough sensitivity or something? And Tolkien's response was, what punishments of God are not also gifts? Which I think is an incredible question to ask, and takes an unbelievable sense of faith to say. But this is the reality that that Tolkien and Stephen Colbert both cited for the way that they view now suffering. And suffering, to be thankful for suffering is sort of, just utterly foreign to the sort of natural understanding of Thanksgiving, right? Like we said, natural understanding of Thanksgiving is good things happen to me, I'm thankful for them.
I'm thankful for good things, like, hey, you gave me this thing, or I have a coat, or not I lost my leg, or my father,
exactly.
or my this hard thing in my life,
this horrible suffering in my life. To be thankful for that is a completely different thing, and really requires some greater understanding that goes beyond just the communal, the interpersonal, the human level. Because I think unless there is a God, right? Unless there is something more than what we can see and hear and touch and smell, it doesn't make any sense. It would make no sense to be thankful for some awful ailment or some illness or some tragedy. And even with faith, sometimes I think it's really, really, really difficult. And I
wonder too if there's a natural component as well, being just different types of personalities of, finding the good in any situation, that kind of attitude where, I did lose my father, and I had to take care of my family, or, something to that effect. But, I learned things from it, and I came out stronger. I mean, there's a very natural reaction when you break a bone, that if it heals correctly, it's stronger than it was before, And so fighters, when they're practicing, they constantly are, getting micro fractures all over, and it hardens their bones and hardens their body to be, better at what they do. And it's, it's something, when I think about that, there's a Christian perspective of suffering, like you're identifying, there's something supernatural to it, that we can then take and be grateful for that. And then I think there is, there's something supernatural to it, but there is something still natural. I think that, in those struggles, in those challenges, it makes us, better, or can make us better and stronger if we can have that perspective. And like you said, without a perspective of the other, or something more, maybe, something more, or something after, something that I have to be good for, whether, karma, or, things like that, if it's Eastern, it would be more egocentric. Like, no, I'm only going to be happy when you give me a good thing. And if I don't get a good thing, I'm going to be mad, and I have a right to be mad, and that is okay. But when you look at that, and I think, I listen to some podcasts from some actors and comedians and things like that. So they're all LA, and they're all like, my therapist this, my therapist that. So it's good that they're talking these things out, and it's really cool to hear, kind of the perspectives that they have on things. And it always kind of comes back to that as well, like, healthy approaches to everything. Like, it is okay to desire something, or to desire, good things to happen to you. But when something bad happens to you, identify how that feels, and, grow from it, learn from it. And they probably don't talk about, be grateful for your suffering, because that is very distinctly Christian. But, I think there is now some sense in modern culture, which is great, because I think then, that's kind of an identification of the natural way the world works, when that kind of secular philosophy comes back into, what's over here in that theological side. And
I think yes, there's certainly the, can I recognize the fruit of a difficult thing that has happened to me in my own life, right? So some terrible thing, some tragedy, right? And there's awful things that people experience. And frankly, I've not dealt with a lot of personal suffering in my life. I don't have a lot to speak of.
Be grateful.
Yeah, and I am very grateful, and I am. I also recognize, though, too, that there's plenty of very, very good people. Who have, let's put it this way. I don't view my lack of suffering as a the fact that I'm, more holy or better at being a person than anybody else. You know what I mean? There's lots and lots of suffering has been done by people who are very, very, very good, holy, virtuous people, whether they're religious or not. It's really not. We don't really believe anymore in the consequence of, like, clearly if you suffer a lot, you must be doing terrible things in your life, right? Like you must be awful.
I mean that's kind of a colloquial attitude to have. Yeah,
and I think that there's obviously we can bring suffering on ourselves through bad choices. That happens all the time. But there's also, what feels like the suffering of the innocent, or what looks like, it's innocent suffering. It happens a lot. And how do we reconcile that? Because there's certain things, like I said, if something...
Well, and I think that is what takes, a touch with the supernatural, takes that bit extra, because it's not natural to be amidst that, to be losing a child or something like that, and to have a positive outlook. Like there's nothing natural about that.
No, and that's where it's gonna, like, there even comes a point where that okay, I had this suffering and I can recognize some good fruit in my life, so I'm going to be thankful for it. There's even that only goes so far. Because there's plenty of suffering where frankly there's not,
or it doesn't make sense, or you don't have a lesson, or
there's really not, or the person dies, or like that's just from on a purely natural level. It's like there was no fruit in that person's life from that thing, right? So we have to recognize that there's fruit that can come beyond even that person's life, right? So one person's suffering can, potentially have a great effect on other people's lives, people that they've never met, people that aren't even born yet. That happens quite a bit. Even looking at the example from before, Tolkien's he's experienced suffering as a child too, losing a parent, maybe both. I can't remember. So his response and his struggle with this thing bore fruit in the life of Stephen Colbert.
Right.
How many years later, right? Never met,
and
never would have known.
Now that story, of how Stephen Colbert was affected, and his, kind of repetition of the experience, is going to speak to. I mean, it impacted you and
me, and even
about
like
on this
that.
Podcast.
That's exactly right. And the GQ interviewer and anybody who read that story, and so if we can have an understanding that goes beyond even the natural, the interpersonal, there is. We can recognize that we can be thankful no matter whether it's good or bad. So it's I think pretty straightforward to say that we ought to be thankful for what is good. Yeah. It's more difficult to recognize that we can be thankful for what is good and for what is maybe not so good. But that great things can happen, or great fruit can come from very, very lousy things. Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought that was a really interesting story, and it takes, it's that's where I think trust comes in too, because if you don't have the belief, if you don't have this trust that, I can't see the end of the book, right? I don't know what's going to happen. This is a great example, I thought, that I heard, where if you were to take, for example, The Lord of the Rings, right? And if you just kind of ripped a page out of it and it just threw it up in the air and it just went on the wind, right? To far, far away. And over time it kind of got worn down and kind of tattered and whatever, right? So, one page of this thousands of pages worth of novel, right? This saga, and it goes out and it gets reduced down to maybe a paragraph, right? Maybe a paragraph or two or something like that. And if somebody were to pick that up and read it, there's a pretty wide spectrum of things that it could be. It could be something relatively benign. It could be something, not very interesting. There's plenty of that in Tolkien's work. Oh yeah,
right? Chapter pages about a bush.
Yeah, right. Dear trees.
Goodness.
Dirt. Yeah, it's really. It could be something like that, or it could be some very happy moment, right? It could be some moment filled with joy, and I think if a person were to pick that up and read it, they'd be like, oh man, it's kind of nice. This is whatever. I like it. I like this. It could also be like the lowest point of Sam and Frodo's suffering in Mordor, right? It could just be some dark, awful,
Just Frodo being a
horrible
baby.
thing.
Like,
Right.
I can't carry it.
Clearly. It could be. It
And
could
then not
be
even
that.
the part where Sam's like, I'll carry you.
Right.
Bro.
No, just like this sucks. Like it's just like
Spoilers.
just suffering. Yeah. Spoiler.
I know some people might not have seen that movie yet. Spoilers.
If they were to read just that, they might think, this sucks. Whoever wrote this clearly just has no clue. You know what I mean? And this is just sad. This is awful. I would never want to be a part of that story. But in the context of this novel, we can recognize that that is one small piece, right? So that this leads to this great, triumphant resolution. That this is in and amongst a huge, flowing ebbs and flows
A
and
tapestry
roll.
of
Yeah,
wonder.
exactly. Right. So it's just one little piece, and if we can see the events that happen in our lives like that, recognizing that it is, our story is not merely our story, right? That there is something else, that there's more going on than just my experience. Then we can start to resolve some of these, what feel like impossible suffering, impossible to understand suffering. And be even thankful for it. So I don't know. It's a difficult thing, and it takes, like I said, it takes that trust and it takes that faith and a willingness to say, I can't read the whole story, but I do believe that it's there. So that's a
Well, I think too, and to be clear, again, I am Catholic and love theology and stuff, but I always think about, how I have this conversation with several different types of people, and there is a natural side of that, of like, calm down. Look at it in your week, right? This is one moment today. Like for me, it's going home and having just trying to, put away all the things that I'm dealing with. Like, oh, there's 4 things I didn't do and I still have to get this out and this and that, with a loving family waiting to just, pour love on me. So thinking about that and really trying to take that perspective, like you're saying, of that piece of the page, that one moment, in your family photography or family photo book, you don't have all the struggles, you live your life in the moments in between those photos, right? And those just show you those, happy, exceptional people who live through those. But really, your life happens in between all that. And seeing, that one little gritty page as just a part of the whole, is just good psychologically thinking, like, hey, this is just one day. This is just one thing. This is just one interaction or, whatever it is. But it's hard because, when you're in the wilderness and this is all that you have, in that moment,
right,
it's hard to think of anything else.
And it's also very hard to think of that thing if that one moment is an entire person or an entire person's, you know what I mean? Like how could I reconcile the suffering of a
so
child? So, you know what I mean? Like how could I, when the small piece is an entire person or entire person's life, that's a really, really difficult thing. But yeah, if we recognize that this goes beyond, even that this is all kind of one big story, then we have an opportunity to be able to reconcile some of that stuff. So I think that's, for me personally, that's what I'm striving toward. I'm certainly striving towards being more thankful in the day-to-day, in the obvious ways, right? Like just being better at showing gratitude and recognizing more and more those good things. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be better about that. But also too, to aim for something even beyond that, to really grow in this other sense that my story, the things that I experience, can bear fruit even beyond my recognition. Right, so it's good to acknowledge that and to even say thank you. So
Madalena's going to kill us if we don't wrap this up. But I wanted to go real quick. Thanksgiving's 3 days ago, or 4 days ago? I don't know. 4 days ago, because it's on a Thursday, I guess. So what are you thankful for?
What am I thankful for? Oh, so many things. I think first and foremost, I'm thankful for my family. I have the best family. I love my wife. I love my children. I've been given so much. My parents and, the family that I was given when I was born.
That you had no choice in.
That I had no choice in, that I did not choose. I lucked into, and it was just a great cosmic gift that I was given. My parents have done so much for me and taught me so much about they raised me really well, but also they are just wonderful, and their example of marriage, I think, is something that I will never be able to repay them for. Everything that I have, I think, in some level is due in so much to their, showing me what sacrifice and what marriage and a commitment to marriage looks like.
Right.
I'm very thankful for my faith. I'm very thankful for the time that I spent in college, particularly at St. Paul's, and for the way that that community of people still is a huge part of my life. I mean, that's part of the reason that I'm here. I mean, you and I met at St. Paul's, and same with John, and that singular place, I think I experienced the fruit of that time daily. First of all, my wife. I mean, I met my wife at St. Paul's, but also just all of our friends and the friends of my children and the community that we have. So much. I'm so thankful for that, and that just sort of. I'm so surrounded by it. I can't possibly. Not think about that. I'm very thankful for my job. I'm very thankful for.
That's right.
Right. I'm very thankful for the gifts, the interests that I have and the talents that I was given, and the opportunity that I have to use them.
What about something fickle?
Something really
like.
Yeah. Okay. What am I most thankful for?
No.
Just a thing that I'm thankful for?
What I'm thankful for, like, technology and the way that, the knowledge is so readily available, but then, like, entertainment, can be more on our schedule instead of trying to work for entertainment, and, like, then that makes me think of interacting with my children and entertaining them, or consuming entertainment with them.
Sure.
It's so easy and so fun, and like it's a rainy day. Hey, we're gonna read a book, but then after we read a couple books, we're gonna watch that Halloween movie or something. Like, to have that capability, I just love.
You know what? So this might be. I'm thankful. And it's only because of my good friend Shippy that I think this way.
Shippy?
Yes.
I met him once.
You met Shippy.
At your birthday. At your B-day.
And and that was a fun time.
That's
Here's a very superficial thing. I'm thankful that I won the poker tournament at my birthday.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did.
I think I had to leave.
Yeah.
Maybe it was you.
No, you were
somebody
there.
Else. Was I?
Mm-hmm. You probably just.
Yeah.
You probably just blocked it out because it was.
Because I didn't win.
It was a tough loss.
Yeah. I hope you're grateful for my money, because I think I bought in twice.
You did.
Yeah.
So he gave me this awesome perspective when he and I met. He's from originally from Albania, Kosovo, and I was complaining about road construction. Like, we were driving, and I was probably 14, 15 years old, and I made a joke, like, there's two seasons in Wisconsin, right? There's winter and road construction, which is sort of a throwaway thing. I didn't mean anything by it, and he, like, kind of put me in my place and was like, you should try having not road construction and see what that's like.
You should try not having roads.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what? Because he was like, man, where I'm from, like, it would take days to go even 100 miles. I mean, it would rip your car apart. The roads are in such terrible condition. You couldn't go see your family. He's like, do you have any idea how nice it is that you can just hop on an interstate and drive for an hour and a half and go see somebody that's 100 miles away?
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. And he was just floored by the roads. And here I am, just like a putz.
New
and
American.
Yeah, complaining about
Scum.
it. So I'm thankful for road construction, is what I'm saying. Yay. And I'm thankful that I have a car. I'm thankful that I can not like
And you can drive on that road construction.
I can drive on that road construction, and that we read Little House on the Prairie with our kids. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, thank you.
Nope. I can go a very long distance in a very short amount of time.
We've lost a child and an ox. I guess we'll live here.
I guess we're done.
I guess this is our land.
This is it now.
That's it.
Yeah.
Cool. With that, we'll close it out. That's our episode this week. Thank you, Phil, for joining us for a philosophical talk on thankfulness.
Hashtag philosophical.
Hashtag philosophical. It's pronounced exactly the same.
Yeah, you have
it's just spelled differently.
Yeah, you can pronounce it differently, but the spelling is the same. It's like,
don't you hit that button.
It's like when you say tomato, tomato. If you type it out, it doesn't really look like anything. Yeah.
Next week, we have what is holiday marketing strategy? Is it working? So we're probably looking at a particular company's strategy, right? Yeah, Melanie's just laughing, and this is her talk, so I hope she knows what she's talking about. That'll be on 12/4, the day before my birthday. So go ahead and send me balloons or whatever you want.
On 12/4?
We are celebrating that day?
You did put it 12/4, 12/5.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 5 and 6.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, the day of.
Your birthday is coming. It's like a couple days away.
Yeah, from the day this posted.
Yeah.
Not from Halloween, which is today.
Oh, peek behind the curtain.
Oh,
what the heck?
I only ever wear the same thing. Like, I have 2 outfits so far.
Yeah.
So that's it. We did it. Thanks, Phil.
You're welcome.